Hello, welcome to another SonicLAB. Today we're going to look at the Korg Volca Beats. This is one of 3 new sort of mini analog instruments from Korg that have got everybody really excited. We did a little unboxing video about a week or so ago and the views went crazy and we got lots of questions, so I'm hoping to answer all of those in this review. But let's get straight to it. Here it is. It's basically, this one is, it's very similar in sort of layout and style to the Monotrons, which have these little kind of knobs. There's lights behind them. What this is a 6-voice analog drum machine, very simple analog drum machine with 4 PCM voices as well. So we'll start off with a kick, we'll get straight into the sounds. This allows me to, I can adjust the click level with this knob, the pitch and the decay. So from quite short to quite high. It has got quite a lot of bottom end. I don't know if this will come across in the video. Snare, we can add the snap and the pitch and the decay. So we can get quite sort of little sort of bitty sounds, not as low as I'd like in the pitch. Low tom and high tom, we can adjust the pitch and the decay. It's got a kind of like 808 or KPR 77 kind of vibe to it. Anyway, on some more. We've got hi-hats. Again, we can adjust the decay of the open and the close separately, and something called the kind of grain. Sounds like a sort of ring mod kind of thing. Then we're onto the PCM sounds. Now, PCM here, I can only adjust the speed of those sounds. It goes very, very low. Clav, the go-go, and crash. Now, they're not what you call kind of high quality samples, obviously very small audio fragments, but they give it a little bit of extra sound to the whole affair. Let's take a look at the connections. Starting off, we've got a power switch, a power connection. I'm running this off my own power supply. It doesn't come with a power supply. It actually has 6 AA batteries. Now, they are included, which is kind of cool, but the power supply is a little bit pricey, but it's nothing unusual. It's a 9-volt center pin positive. Then we've got MIDI in, because we can in fact control this via MIDI to a degree. Then we've got sync in and sync out. Sync in and out are for syncing up other Volcas, so we could chain all 3 together and have the sequences all tied up. That gets clock and it receives clock. You can set the polarity in the functions as well, so there is some extra addition, so you might be able to hook this up to some other kit as well. Finally, we've just got a mini jack audio output. This is stereo. I'm just taking this into a mixer and then straight into the video. We've also got a tempo here, which goes from 56 in and goes up in half increments till you get to about 120, right the way up to 240. And then we've got memory load and save. We've got 8 locations for your own patterns. And then we can go into step mode, which shows what parts are where on the 16-step sequencer. All very basic stuff, play and record. And then the function button, because along here you probably can't see these. If I maybe zoom in, you might be able to see there's this sort of legend here. If I come along, there are various different functions here that you can access with a press of the function button. So quite simple and straightforward. There's also this stutter section. If I go into live mode, it means I can trigger from this little sort of touchpad. And what this is it sounds like a delay, but I think it's actually a re-triggering, and you can apply this to all the voices or onto a single individual voice. And this is quite cool because what you can do here, if I play I could maybe apply this to the hi-hats, go to function, and take off global stutter. I can apply that to the hi-hat, give it a little bit of a jaunty swing. I've also been asking the questions repeatedly about the MIDI capability, so let's hook it up and see what happens. So just plug this in here. So I've got this hooked up to my M-Audio Axiom Air 61, which I will be reviewing shortly. And now I can play these notes via the keyboard. Now, one thing you might notice, there's no velocity sensitivity, and that's true for all of the voices. You cannot affect the velocity whatsoever. Even in the sequencer, the drum machine, there's no accent, so it's just a flat kind of level. There is no way of changing any of that. But what you can do is access certain parameters via MIDI, and the first thing you can do is affect the volume of the individual voices. So this is true for the analog voices and the PCM voices. You can also affect the tom decay, the open and closed hi-hat decay, and the hi-hat grain via MIDI control as well. These control assignments are fixed 40 through 49 for each of the voices. I can also adjust other parameters too. I've got this mapped. If I listen to the clap, the PCM, I can affect the PCM speed, playback speed of each of the PCM voices. I can also adjust the stutter effect, depth and time. One thing that is quite cool is I can actually record parameters into the sequencer as well, but these are limited to only 3 parameters that you can actually record, the motion record. And that is, if I go to the sequencer, I press play, I've got my stutter edit on the clap. Now, I can record the stutter edit motion, and that if I press function and stutter edit, that's recorded that. So that's a nice little feature. I can also record the PCM playback speed. So if we then maybe bring in an a-go-go pattern, I'll just record that in. So I've recorded that in via MIDI. So now what I'm going to do is enable speed playback, which seems to be affecting the clap as well. So if I go to the go-go and start recording, you can see I've recorded some quite interesting pitching effects and modulations on the PCM speed, so you can get some pretty effective stuff. One thing I did notice was there's a disparity between the levels of the internal voicing. So the kick drum you can get really, really loud, snare drum not so, clap perhaps a bit quiet. Also stuff like the hi-hat and the cymbals seem very low in volume. So I would like to see a sort of more parity between levels, because if you want a hi-hat heavy pattern, you've got to turn all the other stuff down to kind of to crank that up. So that's something to watch out for. Now if I load something I created earlier, I can play, this is a 6, so this has got a triplet kind of feel. Now what I did here was I pressed function, I pressed active step. Now in active step I can switch on and off any of the steps in any sequence. What I've done here actually is just got rid of the last 4, so I've got 12 steps, and now that gives me 6s, so it enabled me to create a 3 feel. But I could just as easily switch on and off other steps to create sort of weird patterns and miss out certain beats. That's another neat little feature. A couple more things about the sequencer. Basically, I can be playing a pattern and load new patterns. I've just got to make sure I'm on the bar beat division. So it is possible to actually run kind of chains or whatever in simple format. The only thing I would say, another question that came up is, when you load a pattern, does it recall the analog sounds on the PCM set? The answer is no. Basically, whatever the front panel settings are what the pattern will play. So you can't change the sounds on the fly unless you're actually tweaking the knobs. So a couple more things to look at. We should recognize that if I unplug the unit and we look here, it does actually have a little built-in speaker. So if I play that, perhaps hold that up to my mic. It's kind of like pretty basic, but there it is, it does work. And the other question was about the patch points, whether it's got any. I've had a pretty close look. Basically, if I can get this, and I've got a very bright light here, and maybe if I look, I can see in here sort of labels for snare and tom and that kind of thing. So my guess is it probably does have similar patch points to the Monotron and the Monotribe. I'll open up one of the other ones and we can have a look. I just don't want to do it until I finish my reviews. But overall, when you consider the cost, which is 119 UK pounds, other currencies will scroll below, it's pretty hard to beat at this price. And Korg have to be applauded for actually getting it together to make this range, and something which actually has such a lot of analogness to it for such a low cost. I mean, obviously, if it doesn't make sounds that you're interested in, then it's not going to be of interest to you. Perhaps you want to check out some of the other ones, and more on those later, but hard to complain at this cost.